Okay, I'm working on a 2007 HHR. Going to replace the control arms, lower control arms. There's a lot of videos on this, so I probably won't show every single step. But anyway, I'm also replacing the inner and outer tie rod ends, and I bought a tool on Harbor Freight to do that. Looks like it's going to work well, and I haven't seen anybody using that tool on an HHR, so I'll probably maybe show some video of that. But I was going to take the tie rod, the outer tie rod loose. I was going to use my handy dandy tie rod remover tool. Unfortunately, it won't work on this application. It would might work on a aftermarket tie rod, but this is probably the factory tie rod, and it's got this little hex, looks like on the on the end sticking out, and it makes it just a little bit too long to where that won't fit in there. If it didn't have that little extra bit, then this would work. I've used this on other cars. I really prefer this over what I'm gonna have to do. Of course, I'm gonna have to use the old pickle fork and a big hammer. So we'll pop those loose, and then I can go ahead and take the outer tie rod off, and then the inner tie rod. Okay. Okay. Working on the HHR here. So I was taking this boot off, and I was kind of dreading this inner clamp because it's got this weird clamp, and I didn't know how I was going to get that off without destroying the boot, but I was successful, and I just used a real long center punch and a hammer, and it distorted that thing and broke it loose pretty easily, and then I'll just replace it with a hose clamp. So if you're doing one of these, that boot, man, they want like $35 for these boots, so yeah, that's too much money. I mean, that's, the tie rods are like 20 bucks, 21 bucks, so 35 bucks for boots. You could probably in a pinch use like a shock absorber boot, maybe go to like an off-road store. I don't know, I think that would work. If you did destroy that and you were trying to save a little money, I bet you could use something else. Anyway, yeah, so I got the tie rod, it's loose, so basically I used the pickle fork, but before I took this out, I needed to loosen this up, and I had to use actually a pipe wrench and a hammer. I probably could have, muscled that thing loose, but I was concerned about once it breaks loose that my hand would, ram into the strut or something and smash my thumbnails. So I thought, I'm replacing the tie rod and all this stuff anyway, so why risk injury? So just pipe wrench and a couple taps, and I was able to get that loose. So you want to turn that so it's going that way, just to get it off your tie rod end, outer tie rod end. So everything's loose, so now I can pop the outer tie rod out and get this boot and everything off, and we'll get that inner tie rod. I'm curious if my new tool is going to work like a champ. I hope it will. Alright, here we go. Okay, I'm back on the HHR. There's the inner tie rod. I'm getting ready to take it off. So I should have mentioned, before you ever take tie rods apart, you should take a measurement, a reference measurement. So what I did was, back there, you can kind of see it. To the left there, you see that block. I call that that's basically part of the steering rack. So I just measured from that out to the tie rod end there, and then I wrote that measurement down for each side. And basically, you just have to be kind of close. It doesn't have to be perfect. The idea being, I'm going to be taking this car in and having the front end alignment done, so it just needs to be good enough to get it to the shop. So yeah, so that's that. I'll show you my Harbor Freight tool I'm going to use. Okay, here's the Harbor Freight tool I bought, and that's the HHR inner tie rod in, and it's an 1 3/16 is the adapter you want, the crow's foot or whatever they call these things. 1 3/16 goes on the square. That goes inside this tool. There's the end of it. And then you want to make sure when you buy a tool like this, it needs to be nice and long. You want it to extend out, you know, a ways, and then it takes a 1/2 inch square drive there. Okay. Now, anytime you're doing any kind of front end work on a car, I would highly recommend you get Moog brand. These are, I've been using these for a long time, over 30 years, and you know, this is what a lot of the shops will use. Any decent automotive front end shop will use this brand or something equivalent, but these are really good. I don't know if these are made in USA, not sure. It says it's made for North America, probably not made in America, but anyway, they're high quality parts. Okay, so maybe I'll show that tool going on the car here. Hold on. Okay, folks, I know I said I was going to show that. Anyway, I already got it out, so where's the tool at? There, it's inside there. So I ended up having to use the 1 5/16, and you can see that's not the correct size. I think it's probably like 1 1/4, and the kit doesn't come with that. But I mentioned 1 3/16. That's what the Moog is going to take going back together. And I think I got to put red Loctite on there. I think the tie rod comes with some compound or thread locking compound. So we're just about ready to put the new one back in. And again, I probably won't show this, but it's pretty self-explanatory. You know, this tool goes on there. It's got this locking mechanism here. See if I can get a shot. There we go. You just kind of put that crowfoot piece in there on the tie rod, and then you can lock it in with that, and then you just turn it counterclockwise. It came loose pretty easy. I believe the instruction says it's 53 foot-pounds of torque to put these things on. So obviously, you know, when I go to put it on, I'm going to be going clockwise, but to take it off, just like that. Yep, so okay, we're going to put the inner tie rod on, torque it down. Okay, so those Moog tie rods comes with a little tube of red Loctite 271. So I got the tie rod I threaded on, inner tie rod threaded on by hand, and I got that 1 3/16 tool in there. So now I'm getting ready to put my insulation tool in there. So I won't be able to show this, I'll just show before and after. So I'm going to put that in, torque it to 53 foot-pounds, and then I got to put that boot back on, and I'll have to get a hose clamp or something to hold that on there. Okay. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've torqued that to 53 foot-pounds. It's all in there. So I mentioned earlier that you want a tool that's nice and long, and this is why. I mean, imagine if that thing was a lot shorter, then the torque wrench is going to have to be way in there. So this one just makes it out past the rotor. So yeah, this is the Harbor Freight unit. I'm not sure how long this is, but maybe I'll take a measurement on that and let you know. But it worked really well. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to measure this, and I'm going to go from that square notch right there, and it measures about 19 inches. Now they probably say that it's a 20-inch tool, but you know, you got to figure that this is the point here where your wrench, your crowfoot is going to be, so it doesn't do any good to measure out to here. So it's going to be from here out to the end. So that was 19 inches. So anything on a HHR 19 inches or longer would work. Now you could run a shorter one if you just put an extension on. If it was 16 inches, you could always put an extension on. I think it might be a little more awkward though, but anyway, that thing worked great. So I'm gonna get the boot on. Okay, so I went through my parts pile and I found a hose clamp. So that's about a 2 1/4 inch, just barely makes it. So I'm hoping that'll work. And so I'm going to spray some simple green or something inside there because this thing's pretty dry, and then crank that sucker on there, put it back in. Alright, more to come. Okay, I mentioned earlier that I got that light right in the way. Mentioned earlier that there's a boss down there. Let's see, it's kind of hard to get the light in there, but anyway, I can see it really well. Let's see, I don't know why I can't get the camera on it. Okay, so anyway, you can kind of see it back there. So I measured 18 3/16 out to, well, where this zerk hole is. So let's see, where's my measuring tape? There we go. Probably hard to see, but anyway, measure that to 18 3/16, and then I'm going to put it in there. And that's close enough, and then the alignment shop will do, they may have to make an adjustment. I put anti-seize on there, copper based. I like Loctite C5 Alpha. There you go. Good stuff. That just makes it a lot easier for the next guy to work on this, because the next guy is probably going to be me. And yeah, I got the boot on. You can see that hose clamp. I was able to reuse this. So yeah. This was pretty easy so far, and then I'm going to do the control arm. Alright, there we go. Okay, well, I had a heck of a time getting the ball joint out. Here I've got the floor jack under the rotor there, and I was lifting up on it. I used my pickle forks to separate the try to separate the ball joint. I used the big wide one here, but it wasn't thick enough. It bottomed out, and then I had some wedges back there. I tried those. I tried all kinds of stuff. So on these ball joints, there's an indentation. You can kind of see it there, where the bolt goes through, and that's what holds them in. So I thought, oh, I can use my smaller pickle fork. I shoved that in there and was able to get it out. So that's probably not the proper way to do this, but that's what I did. So yeah, you can see the bushing's completely shot. I think this is a horrible design. I think GM really screwed up on this car, these Chevrolets. I think it should have had 2 joints like that, so this thing could rotate up and down a little bit, because that just tears up that back bushing. Yeah, not sure why they did it like that. I've never seen control arms like this before. Usually, at least on the old cars, they'd have 2 like that. You have what they call an A-arm, and the old cars had A-arm, rear-wheel drive cars. Yeah, and I think that's why they're having all these problems. You go down the road, it just beats the heck out of that rear bushing. I mean, what else is it going to do? It's just tied straight up and down. And this thing wants to rotate up and down. Obviously it's going to tear up that bushing. So, but then again, I'm not an engineer, so what do I know? So there's the new Moog on the top passenger side, and the GM one on the bottom. Yep, getting ready to install. Okay, I got the control arm back in on the passenger side. It was a little difficult to get the ball joint in, but I got it in there. And the rear bolt took a little coaxing. I had to use a alignment punch and everything. It's best to keep these front bolts loose. There's about a 1/2 inch of slop that the control arm can move. So you want to keep those loose while you're trying to put the rear bolt in. and probably want to leave your ball joint loose as well. Yep, okay, so now we're ready to attack the driver's side. Rinse and repeat. I kind of wanted to mention something that I noticed. So this is the original inner tie rod I took off versus the new Moog ones. I noticed that when I put the boot on, the one that's in the car, it comes way out, whereas the one on the, I was looking at the one on the passenger side, the boot is real short, like it's accordion way in, and that's because this fat part here, you know, it stops like right here, so the boot is real compacted. But when I did the passenger side, I noticed it's real long. Well, that's because this is thick all the way out to this point, so you can kind of let that boot extend out a little farther. Yeah, so it's pretty beefy, pretty well built parts. I don't know if these ones here are factory, but it's a little different. Oh, I think I mentioned that I needed I used 1 inch and 5/16 to get this off, but I think it's really probably 1 1/4 inch, which I don't have. Luckily I was able to get that with the 5/16, and it just has 2 flats. And this one, of course, is 1 3/16. You can see the difference, quite a bit different. Okay. Okay, so I mentioned earlier on the other side, I was talking about that boot, and I used a punch and a hammer to break the band off, and then I'm going to replace that with a, there's the punch. Just went back there and broke the factory band off. I think it fell out of there. But anyway, what I was going to mention also is I've got this, it's just a pointed tool from Harbor Freight, and just very carefully shove it under that boot. It's pretty dry and pretty tight, so shove that in there, and then I squirted some Windex in there. You could use Windex, WD-40, anything with basically water in it, or oil. Simple green would probably work. And then I just work that thing around, you know, put a little more, just kind of work it all the way around. It's kind of hard to show this. You know, work the tool all, to where it goes all the way around there. Then just keep squirting liquid in there, go in a little farther, work it around, and eventually you'll get to where you can just pull that thing right off. But you got to get that kind of wet and everything. Like I say, I really don't want to have to replace these boots. It's just an unnecessary expense. I also mentioned earlier about how short that boot is. When I put the new inner tie rod in, it'll probably be clear out here somewhere. It'll be a little bit longer. But yeah, so that's just a little tip if I didn't mention that already earlier. Okay folks, so I was wrong. This kit does come with 1 1/4 inch. I didn't see that, but here it is, 1 1/4 inch, and that will go right on these. I'm assuming that's a factory GM. So like I say, on the other one I used the 5/16, and I was able to get it off, but this is the proper one. I measured it with the calipers and it's spot on. So 1 1/4 inch to take it off, and then the Moog is going to be 1 3/16. So there you go. Okay, got the driver's side control arm out. Bushings, oops. Yeah, of course the bushing's pretty shot, so. Yeah, I mean this car, I think it has 117,000 miles. It's been in a few accidents, but I don't know. These things tend to wear out. That bushing's not as bad. Still. Anyway. So far it's going pretty well. More to come. Okay. Okay, got the driver's side all together. Yeah, it was a little more difficult on this side. I got the rear bolt in first, and then I put the ball joint in, and then I could not get the other two bolts in the back. The control arm was about 2 inches away from the frame, so I decided to try to take the ball joint back out, and I got it about an inch out, and then the control arm moved in to where I could get the bolts started. It moved in about an inch. So yeah, it was just a little different on this side. So I'm going to clean this thing up a little bit and put the tires on and take it for a test drive, and then we'll take it to the alignment shop and we're good to go.